Welcome to the tutorial of the Contour Glow. This is one of my projects that I've been working on currently, where it creates a glow effect over the contours that are created from your medium that you input in. In this case, I'm actually using my web camera, so you'll be able to see a little bit about what's going on and how it would look on different types of media. For instance, how it looks on just straight images, how it would look on animations, and just some various smatterings of different kinds of things that I've been thinking about. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some of these settings here in order to make this work. So what it's doing is it's using your media that you provide it, and the effects are added to that medium. So we have your typical brightness and contrast filters to brighten and add contrast to the medium itself. But there's also an option for levels. So there's the base, there's the midpoint, and then there's the ratio. In some cases, this may not be a big difference, and it has to do with how much gray tone values you have in your specific image. So in this particular case, I'm using my webcam. However, what I would suggest is if you have, like, for instance, a Kinect, Xbox 360 Kinect, or just the other version of the Kinect, which is for not really too sure, but it's basically a depth map camera, and what it'll do is it'll allow you, these particular settings will allow you to adjust the contrast of where that value of contour is being set. So you may get a better result with a depth camera. So just keep that in mind. However, that doesn't mean that you can't do wonderful things with it with this particular type of technology, because what it's doing is it's utilizing the dark values and the light values, and it's making a contour filter based on those values. So in any case, again, what we have is some options to change that contrast so that it could adjust where that depth is happening. So there's a brightness and contrast filter, right? So it allows me to bring it closer to me or further away, depending on the image. So because I have lights that are on in front of me, there's a brightness lit here. So that's the reason why you're going to see this kind of like move forward versus move back. Same thing with the base, midpoint, and ratio. However, the base, midpoint, and ratio, the levels in that are not going to react the same way as if they had a depth camera. A depth camera is going to give you a different result, because a depth camera is using the dark and light values to read the depth. So that's going to be more instrumental or more important in those particular cases. Now, what I've also done is I've also added the option for curves. So then what you would be able to do is choose the kind of curve that you want to use on your gradient filter, if you will, right? So if you want there to be like lots of darks and lots of whites, you might use a quadric in and out, right? If you want it to be just a normal, typical like threshold gradient, you would use linear, right? So there's that option. Now, it should be defaulted to linear, so in most cases you may not want these, but feel free to experiment with this because this will give you different results. There could be all kinds of different ways in which this will affect where the threshold is happening. So that's a little bit about how that works. So I just want to kind of give you a little bit more tutorial on the rest of the options. So for instance, we have the edges, which allow this option, line smooth, allows you to smooth the lines that are created within the threshold. As you'll notice on the right hand side over here, for example, it went away because my auto contrast on my web camera changed. But you'll notice that on the right-hand side here, there's this little artifact noise that's created. And the reason for that is because it's creating an edge line contour based on that value. So it sees that that value is shifting a certain amount between the light value and the dark value. And so what happens is that creates this jagged edge. as I create this smoothness, this is using Quahara. I can't even say that, but it's a filter that basically allows that line to smooth out. But you'll notice that my face doesn't have as much detail as it just did. It's still a fairly interesting look. There may be some cases where you may want this. However, this allows you to kind of smooth those out, and you'll notice that the jagged edges, the noise is not as heavy there, right? As if I go back to this, you'll notice there's a little bit more heaviness to that. So that's the option to change that. You also have the option to change the amount of lines that are added to the face, right? So now you have this thick, broad line that's being used on my face in order to make that glow. The thing is, however, the more thickness of the lines, the brighter the light is going to be, and there are options to change that, and we'll go through that in just 1 second. But I also want to show, like, for instance, line amount. The line amount can be like very thin, right? But then it can also be very thick. So there's multiple lines now, to the point where you can't even see the lines because they're overlapping on top of each other, and they're so small that the thickness is so small because of how close they are together. So this gives you a different effect, right? There may be a case where you want this. In most cases, I like something that's kind of in between. I like the ability to adjust. There may be cases where I think this could be visually interesting, right? It's just creating 1 or 2 line amounts, and as you increase it, it changes the way it looks. There's the line thickness, which basically thickens the line, and then there's the line strength, which, boosts it up to 11. Even past that, right? So now we have this kind of blown out glow. I thought this could be visually interesting as well, so kept it there. You have the option to turn off the glow if you so choose to, and then you could make your lines thick, right? And so now you just have basically a basic contour. It's visually interesting, but in my particular case, I can see some interest in this, but there are other filters and that are pre-made within Resolume that actually probably do these kinds of things. This is meant for the glow. So that's what this is about. So anyways, I'm going to turn some of this down a little bit. I'm going to go back to the strength. I'm going to bring down the thickness. So now we have the edge strength and the edge thickness to an acceptable level where you see these level of colors that are being chosen around, and it's not being blown out too much. There may be cases where I want to blow it out. So I'm going to add in some glow. I'm going to change the glow size. The glow size is basically to change the fuzziness of the glow. You'll notice that I have this kind of contour line look here. However, there are some hazing fuzz that's happening in the background in this area here, for instance. I might want to kind of increase the bloom to basically create this kind of like weird, like a ghosting effect. There could be some cases where that could be visually interesting, right? So I'm going to change my glow size. I'm going to bring down my glow size and the glow threshold, which is basically how bright certain things are going to be in that area. It's going to be blown out, right? So you have the options to control all of that, right? So now I could do like this. This is a visually interesting kind of ghosting kind of bloom. It's got some really kind of interesting spaces. So in any case, I usually like mine somewhere around here, and I might want like something like this, right? And then I'll bring down the bloom of the glow. So now I'm going to change the contrast. The contrast basically allows me to change the contrast of the colors. So if I bring it down the brightness, you'll notice that everything seems dim as far as the colors. And if I bring it up, the colors seem like almost oversaturated. They're bright and brilliant, but there's also blown out there. So you usually want something in between. There may be cases where you want like to adjust that. So there's the options. Same thing with contrast. You may want to like make this overly contrasted. You have the option to kind of adjust the colors as you see fit. And then you also have the option, there's a vertical, I don't know how this is happening here. You have this vertical like color here, for instance, right? And so as you move up, there's blue, and then there's a light blue kind of mixed into each other. So there's like a gradient that's going from the red to the blue, and that's done here. So there's an option to color shift. The color shift actually changes between the two blue colors. You'll notice that there's color A, 1A and 1B. 1A, 1B is basically talking about the colors that are within those two spaces. It flip-flops them, and the color shift allows you to kind of adjust where those are hitting. So there may be instances where you want to do that. And vice versa with a shift 2, there's a color contrast or a color shift there as well, right? So the other option is radial. Radial basically takes the blue and puts it in the middle and radiates out to the red. So those are some nice little features with this. I thought there were cases where you may want to do this. And so that's what that's for. Finally, the last thing in this particular effect is the screen. I figured in some cases you may want that kind of like CRT kind of look where you have the scan lines or the lines, the stripes within the system, right? So there may be cases where you want to have that look, right? I thought that could be visually interesting. And then you have the option to basically change the thickness of those lines, and then you also have the ability to change the line amount. So now you have this kind of screen look, right? You can adjust this as you see fit. So now there are like these individual lines. It really does kind of take away from the darkness or the brilliance of the glow, but you just have to just pump up the glow a little bit more and you'll be able to get a better effect. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change this. I'm going to add in within the screen. I may add the option to make it so that it's a little bit brighter. I may not, because there's a reason, there was a method to this. So the reason why I made it so that it was set this way was because the scan lines or the screen is actually masking out those areas. So the reason why I thought this could be visually interesting is there may be a case where, for instance, you want something in the background, and now it creates this screen over the top of what's already there, right? So you have these kind of like cutout options. This was another effect that I had created, the solar mandala. There's all kinds of different, effects and whatnot you can add. It's just a background. I thought this could be visually interesting. However, I started playing around with this. This is the new traffic slide that I've been working on. And so I had one that I really liked, this one here. I didn't have the scan lines on, and I thought that was visually interesting. Let me go back up and turn off this screen. Whoop, turn off the screen. And so now you have the contour lines over the top of the background image, if you will, the traffic slide. So I thought that could be visually, impactful. So in any case, we could match the colors so that they match the background a little bit more. Change this to HSB, and then we can bring down the values, change the color shift to somewhere in there. And then what we could do is we could actually up the threshold a little bit, add a little bit of glow, so that we, have a different effect. I might want to change the strength effect. So now my eyes are visual over the top of this image, and so it makes this kind of, very interesting effect. I want to change the bloom or change the color in the background so it's like warm. And so anyways, you get the idea. There's all kinds of cool things you could do with this. I thought this was, a great way to add some effects to your images, to your stuff. So hope you like this tutorial, or hope you like this patch or this effect. Please, as always, questions, comments, complaints, concerns, let me know. My email address is jacobmesick, MESICK, @gmail.com. Hey, thanks very much for your interest in my patch, and you be sure to have a great day. Laters.